It is 9 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and start. We'll call this meeting of the Texas State Board of Pharmacy to order. As is our custom, I will go ahead and read the mission statement, and that is that the Texas State Board of Pharmacy, as a leader in protecting the public health of the citizens of Texas, shall uphold quality standards for licensing and facilitate regulation that promotes innovative, multidisciplinary, and collaborative practices and education which produce quality care and positive patient outcomes. I hope you like the new meeting room. This will be a trial to see if we stay here. There are some additional announcements to our normal ones, and that is board members, as you speak, you are going to have to push the button on your microphone. You do need to pull it close enough that it picks you up. We want to make sure that everyone in the audience hears, as well as those online. For those individuals that did register to speak, when you come forward to the desk, you will have to do the same. So just be aware of that. As always, the QR codes have been posted. These do have the agenda, as well as the Wi-Fi password. So those are there for you. And with that, I will turn it over to Danny to do roll call.
Thank you, Julie. Julie Spear.
Here.
Bradley Miller. Here. Jenny Yoakum. Here. Rick Fernandez. Here. Donnie Lewis. Here. Haysha Freeman. Here. Randy Martin. Here. Donna Montemayor. Here. Ian Shaw. Suzette Tijerina. And Rick Tisch. Thank you.
All right, we will have Ian marked as absent. We do want to welcome our newest public member. Haysha Freeman has joined us, and we're very excited to have her on the board. So welcome. Continuing education, as always, is available. There are 3 hours for those that stay for the whole meeting. At the end of the meeting, QR codes will be posted so that you can claim that CE. And with that, board members, we'll go to B on the agenda. You all had a copy of the minutes sent to you in advance so that you could review them. And at this time, if there are no corrections, or if there are, bring those up. But if not, I'll take a motion to approve. I have a motion to approve from Donnie, a second from Randy. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and minutes are approved. With that, we will go to C on the agenda, and we will start a discussion for our final adoption of rules, and I will turn it over to Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, Madam President. Board members, in the rule PDFs you've been provided, there are bookmarks with links to the lines with the edits. Also, for the rules for adoption, you have received copies of the orders and preambles and the OneDrive link that was sent to you. Also, you have them on your computers in front of you. For the rules for adoption, all the rules up for adoption today were proposed at the February 6, 2024 board meeting and were published in the March 21st, 2025 issue of the Texas Register. The first one we're going to look at is C 1.1.1. We're going to do actually 2 of these together. The first one is Rule 281.2, and this is concerning definitions. And on line 50, it amends the definition of act, that being the Texas Pharmacy Act, to include chapters 551 through 569 of the Texas Occupations Code. Board members, this is just cleanup to update this. And the next one, C.1.12, is 291.102 concerning non-resident pharmacies or Class E definitions. And on line 43, it amends the definition of act, the Texas Pharmacy Act, to include chapters 551 through 569 of the Texas Occupations Code. There were no comments regarding either of these rules.
Board members, do we have a motion to adopt?
Motion.
I have a motion to adopt here from Bradley, and I believe Donna had a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. John?
The next one is C 1.2. These are amendments concerning prescription delivery. And again, we have 2 of them we're going to do together. The first one, C.1.2.1, amendments to 291.9 prescription pickup locations. And on lines 47 through 48, we are going to add the terms or contract carrier, and we're going to remove the example of the U.S. mail. On lines 62 through 66, it adds that a pharmacist or pharmacy, by use of unmanned aircraft systems, i.e. drones, at the request of a patient or patient's agent, may deliver prescription drugs, excluding controlled substances, sterile compounded preparations, or drugs requiring storage below a cool temperature as defined by 291.15 of this title, and that's relating to the storage of drugs, to the residence of the person for whom the prescription was issued. The board did receive some comments on this rule. The first one was from the Small UAV Coalition in support of the amendments. The board also received a comment from Rob Geddes, PharmD with CVS Health, expressing support for the amendments and suggesting the removal of language that excludes drugs requiring storage below a cool temperature from delivery by unmanned aircraft systems, and replacing language that limits delivery of prescription drugs by unmanned aircraft systems to the residence of the patient with the selected delivery location of the patient. The board also received comments from Memorial Hermann Health System and Zipline International in support of the amendments and suggesting the removal of language that excludes drugs requiring storage below a cool temperature from delivery by unmanned aircraft systems, and that limits delivery of prescription drugs by unmanned aircraft systems to the residence of the patient. The next one, which we'll look at together, is C.1.2.2, amendments to 291.12, and here we're going to start with some definitions. The first one on line 45 is we're going to add common carrier, a person or entity who holds out to the general public a willingness to provide transportation of property from place to place for compensation in the normal course of business. On line 48, we're going to add the definition of contract carrier, a person or entity who provides to industrial customers, pursuant to the terms of a bilateral agreement, the transportation of property for compensation in the normal course of business. On line 51, we're going to add contract carrier there a couple places and remove example of U.S. mail. We're also going to strike through that common carrier means a person or entity who holds out to the general public a willingness to provide transportation of property from place to place for compensation in the normal course of business. And then we're going to add or contract carrier once again. On line 59, we're going to talk about the standards, and we're going to add the line that the pharmacy is responsible for any problems in the delivery of a prescription drug by a contract carrier. On lines 66, 75, 78, and 80, we're going to add the terms contract carrier. And on lines 87 through 92, we're going to add that delivery by unmanned aircraft systems, i.e. drones, a pharmacy may deliver prescription drugs, excluding controlled substances, sterile compounded preparations, or drugs requiring storage below a cool temperature as defined by 291.15 of this title. That's again relating to the storage of drugs. By use of a common or contract carrier, providing an unmanned aircraft system delivery service as provided in 291.9 of this title on request of the patient or patient's agent. On lines 93 through 98, we're going to talk about the standards. And unmanned aircraft systems shall maintain appropriate federal registration and comply with all state and federal laws and rules. The pharmacy shall ensure that all prescription drugs are delivered to the patient or patient's agent in accordance with nationally recognized standards, such as those of the manufacturer or the United States Pharmacopoeia. The pharmacy is responsible for any problems in the delivery of the prescription drug. Then, starting on line 99, provides that the pharmacist in charge is responsible for developing written policies and procedures regarding prescription drug delivery in accordance with this subsection to be used by pharmacy personnel to include, but not limited to, the following: training pharmacy personnel engaged in preparing and packaging prescription drugs for delivery, packaging prescription drugs for delivery, verification of the correct recipient and delivery address, maintaining the confidentiality of prescription records, secure transfer of prescription drugs from the pharmacy, provision of patient counseling, remediation of errors in delivery or adverse events, and record keeping. On line 111, it talks about packaging, and the pharmacy shall ensure that prescription drugs are packaged in commercially available tamper-evident packaging. On line 113, it discusses the temperature. The prescription drug shall be maintained within the temperature range allowed by the United States Pharmacopoeia or recommended by the manufacturer until the delivery has been received by the patient or patient's agent. On line 116, it discusses records. The pharmacy shall document each change in the chain of custody of a prescription drug, including departure of the prescription drug from the pharmacy, transfer to the person or entity fulfilling delivery, and delivery to the patient. On line 119, it provides the confirmation of presence at the residence. The pharmacy shall receive confirmation from the patient or patient's agent that the patient or patient's agent is present at the residence before unmanned aircraft system delivery is initiated. On line 122, it discusses security. The pharmacy must ensure that delivery is made to a reasonably secure location at the patient's residence that minimizes the opportunity for unauthorized access to prescription drugs and confidential prescription records. On line 125, it's going to add or contract carrier again. It's also going to provide that by a pharmacy that delivers prescription drugs by common or contract carrier, by pharmacy employee, or common or contract carrier providing a same-day courier service, or by common or contract carrier providing an unmanned aircraft systems delivery service, shall also comply. We did receive 3 comments. The first one was from the Small UAV Coalition in support of the amendments. The second comment was from Rob Geddes, PharmD with CVS Health, expressing support of the amendments, but suggesting the removal of language that excludes drugs requiring storage below a cool temperature from delivery by unmanned aircraft systems, and replacing language that limits delivery of prescription drugs by unmanned aircraft systems to the residence of the patient with the selected delivery location of the patient. The board also received comments from Memorial Hermann Health System and Zipline International in support of the amendments and suggesting the removal of language that excludes drugs requiring storage below a cool temperature from delivery by unmanned aircraft systems, and that limits delivery of prescription drugs by unmanned aircraft systems to the residence of the patient, and to shift responsibility to the delivery provider to confirm that the patient will be present at the time of delivery. And that was all the comments.
Thank you, John. All right, at this time, we do have individuals that have signed up to speak, and at this time, we'll call forth Memorial Hermann Health Systems. And Benita and Freddie, if you'll introduce yourselves as you start.
Members of the board and staff, my name is Freddie Warner. I serve Memorial Hermann Health System as the system's Chief Government Relations Officer. Simply want to say that we have so much appreciated the opportunity to spend time with you and with the staff of the board for the last year plus as we have pursued our system goal of expanding access and also bringing down the cost of the access that we provide in our market. And a lot of that is done through our strategic alliances with organizations such as Zipline. We are available to respond to any questions or comments you might have. And I'd like to have the opportunity for my colleague Benita Patel to speak specifically to the suggested revisions to the proposed rules for which we made comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the board. It's nice to see y'all 13 months in the making. I'm Benita. I'm the Vice President of Pharmacy Services. I feel like we know each other, so I won't go into more details on what we do at Memorial and how this impacts our patients that we serve. But the 3 things I want you to remember are the 3 A's. It helps us with access, affordability, and adherence to medications. And so we're so excited about this rule. So thank you for doing that. We do have 3 suggestions we would like to make to the board. One is around removing the statement or decision around below cool. Why? It's because we learned through COVID that we're going to have medications. More and more are coming to the pipeline where they're going to require different storaging situations. And so that limits in terms of what we can provide our patients. The one thing we don't believe in is polypharmacy. And so we want to make sure we can support our patients with all their medication needs. And Zipline, the partnership that we've developed, they have proven over and over again in an 8-year relationship with the products that they have served, including the COVID vaccine, to say they can do this. So that was one. The second one is removing the obligation from the pharmacist in charge to the carrier in terms of verification. when the patient does receive the medication. This is similar to what we do with all our common carriers. Right now, we rely on the common carrier to verify that the prescription was delivered, the patient signs for it, and that's how we're able to track and trace that the medication was received. Last but not least is the third suggestion we'd like to make is around removing that it can only be delivered to residential homes. Why? Because we have a 15 hospital system from the southmost hospital to the northmost hospital. It's about an hour and a half. I'd like to move product around. That's going to decrease our inventory, which directly reduces our cost to the patients. And so one thing is to move it around our campuses. The other thing is we're also a Lifelight institution. That means we have a huge trauma center. I'd like to deliver the medication literally one day to the site where the patient is suffering and where there's EMS personnel that can administer these medications properly. And hence why we'd like to remove the restriction around only residential areas.
Board members, any questions for these two individuals? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we'll call forward Zipline. And again, if you'll introduce yourselves, and as always, as we go through the day, you know, if there's already been testimony on something, you know, let's not repeat.
Sure.
And if you'll introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Keval Patel, General Counsel at Zipline.
Delphia McKinney, Customer Success, Zipline.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. And the first thing I want to do is just make very clear to you all that Zipline is fully supportive of the proposed rule. We and our healthcare partners are ready and eager to start delivering pharmaceutical products to Texans now. Very excitingly, this past month, we've launched retail and food delivery in Mesquite, Texas, as well as Waxahachie, Texas, and we'll be adding 20 additional cities in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro this year, and then next year we'll be launching in Houston. So we're just very, very thrilled to begin deliveries of pharmaceutical products to large health systems, to retail pharmacies, and to family pharmacies alike. All this said, we respectfully offer 3 refinements to the proposed rule that I think would make it more durable without sacrificing safety, traceability, and quality. The first refinement for us is really just the recommendation to revise the requirement that the pharmacy must confirm the patient's home prior to initiating delivery. Instead, we believe that the rule should allow the pharmacy to ensure that the UAS provider receives confirmation of presence for delivery. While the rule as drafted may make sense if the pharmacy is also a drone operator, when they're separate entities, it creates avoidable complexity and burdens pharmacists with responsibilities that, frankly, are better handled by the drone operator. I think this would particularly disproportionately impact smaller pharmacies that may lack capacity for real-time confirmations to their patients. Additionally, UAS providers offer tracking and delivery confirmation features that are comparable to, if not better than, traditional ground delivery. At Zipline, for example, patients opt into a specific delivery window through their pharmacy. They then receive real-time GPS tracking down to the second. And then they can choose secure drop-off points, like a spot in their fenced-in backyard, so that they can experience fast, predictable, and secure delivery. The second recommendation is to remove the blanket restriction on drone delivery of cold chain products. As our friends at Memorial Hermann mentioned, this is an access issue. Patients that are relying on cold chain medications, like someone with diabetes who can't drive, have the most to gain from drone delivery. But it's also a self-determination issue for pharmacists. I think pharmacists should be able to be empowered to use their professional discretion to determine which cold chain products are delivered via which mode of transportation. This is not necessarily saying that every single cold chain product will be delivered by drone, but rather the pharmacist can determine which cold chain products are delivered by drone versus by car or the like. Importantly, we also deliver the product in the same cold chain packaging that the pharmacy provides to us. It fits into our droid, as you can all see. And to the extent the packaging doesn't fit, we work with the pharmacy to build out additional packaging, and then we get that independently validated to make sure that we're not sacrificing anything on quality. The last piece here is that drone delivery is also just, frankly, precisely suited for cold chain delivery. They're really fast. So the maxed time for a drone delivery for Zipline is 10 minutes. Right now in Mesquite and Waxahachie and Pea Ridge, Arkansas, we're averaging around 3.5 minutes per flight. And they're also direct flights. So you get the flight from the pharmacy to the patient's home, which is, pretty different from a van that is making a number of deliveries over the course of a few hours with products in their cooler. The final suggestion is really just around broadening the approved delivery locations beyond a patient's home to include other secure locations, such as their workplace or a doctor's office. As we pointed out, whether at home or elsewhere, patients maintain full control over the drop location and receive real-time delivery tracking for maximum convenience and security.
And we also want to point out that we do allow the option of internal portals within the facility. So from packing to actually pick up, this can all happen within the facility building. We also offer an option of Dropbox for asynchronous pickup.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right. Board members, do you have any questions? I believe Jenny has one.
I do. Can you describe, you mentioned the independent validation procedure. Can you describe what that entailed?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a concrete example. In 2020, 2021, we partnered with Pfizer to deliver the COVID-19 ultra cold frozen vaccine in Ghana. And we had validated packaging, but that packaging was not up to snuff for Pfizer. And we needed to kind of rejigger it a bit to fit into the aircraft. So what we did was we hired a third-party developer who is a professional in the space to build out that packaging for us, and then we independently tested it at a testing facility before making deliveries to patients. Since then, we've delivered hundreds of thousands of COVID-19 vaccines in Ghana and throughout West Africa.
And that is the Zipline packaging. We just want to emphasize that usually what we're doing, for example, if the packaging is too small and they have a vendor, say McKesson, we'll actually ask them to work with that vendor to get a smaller size and go through that same verification process that they already have. So we, more often than not, are relying on our partner and their packaging and their validation process.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, board members, what is your pleasure? You have a question. Okay.
So actually I had a question on interpretation, make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly. So we've heard a lot of talk about the cold chain and suggested in some of the written statements seem to interpret the way that the proposed rule is written as being at or below cool temperature, but it seems like the rule is written to be below cool temperature, right? So it would be anything less than 36 degrees Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius, correct?
Correct. That's the way it's written, below a cool temperature as defined by 291.15.
Perfect. Thank you. So it would include refrigerated products, but not frozen products as written.
When you say would include refrigerated,
sorry.
not.
Let me clarify. So the rule as written would allow for drone delivery of refrigerated products, but not frozen products.
If they were at or above a cool temperature.
All right. Other questions? Discussion?
I did have one other kind of point of discussion that was brought up a couple of times. So I know that we do have written in the rule at the residence. Delivery to doctor's offices is becoming increasingly vogue. And the idea there is that the patient just has one access point. So I don't know if there's a way to balance the making sure the drug doesn't end up in the wrong place or with the wrong person. I don't know if there's a way to balance that in the rules where we could allow for other reasonable locations. Like, we probably don't want it dropping off at the patient's work, and we probably don't want it dropping off at the school or something like that. But I don't know if there's a way to give a little bit more flexibility in there.
Yeah,
Yes, Rick.
Could I follow up on what he's saying?
Good.
I mean, I would just agree with some of the suggestions to put in here, just at the suggested delivery location the pharmacy wants to send it to. Well, why wouldn't you want to send it to a workplace if they agree to do that, if they have a good place for it, right? So, I mean, residents, I don't think we have to limit it to residents. That's really what we're trying to, first of all, say. But say something like a selected delivery location the pharmacy agrees to send it to, where the patient is, whatever.
You have a thought, Megan?
I just want to caution you, if you say at the selected delivery location, that could be anywhere. We would have
It's where,
no,
where the pharmacy agrees to, the pharmacy wants to send it to. I mean, they're
yeah, anywhere the pharmacy wants to.
similar to how we send any medication out today, wherever the address that we agree to send it to that's safe.
Well, I think drones are a little unique in that they don't have to go to a delivery address, whereas a carrier most likely would. So, I mean, you could have a drone land in the middle of a parking lot, whereas you typically would not have other common carriers with that capability to deliver to, you know, a GPS location versus an address. So I just want to caution you to consider that.
So this rule is not just for the drones. It's for everyone, for every delivery.
This rule, so depending on what part you're looking at, the amendments are for drones,
Okay.
the drone delivery.
So if you said selected delivery location approved by the pharmacist or something like that, could you do something like that so that
You could. I just want to make sure that you fully understand that that means that if the pharmacist feels that it is appropriate to deliver it to the middle of a parking lot, that that's a choice that this rule would allow if you made that amendment.
Actually, you to
Press. Okay.
As a consumer, I would think that people who live in, say, apartment complexes or high crime neighborhoods, I would rather have something delivered to my place of work than an apartment or townhome where, Amazon packages are frequently stolen, things like that. And even if I'm watching for it, maybe bad actors might get to it before I would. So as a consumer, I'd like to have choice of where my prescriptions would be delivered. That'd be important to me.
Rick.
Again, I go back to the selected delivery location, the pharmacy and the patient or the agrees. Okay, I mean, the example of the parking lot is an extreme example, but it may be the option we have to have. I mean, but the pharmacy assumes responsibility for saying I want to send it there, like we do anything else. I mean, that's really what I'm thinking. Limiting it to residents, I think, is not going to be a good thing in general. We have to figure out how we want that language to read, I guess, is what we're trying to figure out. I would just say maybe it's a selected delivery location, and we have here also that the pharmacy is responsible for the delivery of it, right? I mean, already, didn't we say that already in the language?
the pharmacy is responsible up until the point that the consumer.
Right. And the pharmacy could easily say, I'm not going to deliver it to a parking lot. That's what I'm saying. The pharmacy could say that.
So, looking at the language as far as select delivery location, I think that, and Megan and John, correct me if I'm wrong on this, if that's the direction we want to go, we could add as determined by the pharmacist or mutually agreed upon by the pharmacist and the patient using the pharmacist's professional judgment. And then it reiterates the fact that the pharmacist is responsible up until the point of delivery. So if it is stolen,
yeah, and
or it does go to a bad area, they're still going to be responsible.
But it allows the delivery to other places like the physician's office and things like that, you know.
I'll make a motion then to adopt the changes with that language that Julie mentioned.
We might want to repropose and get public comment on that change. It's a pretty large
That was going
change
to be
of
my next question, was whether or not that was substantial enough we need to bring it back to proposed.
I think that's a pretty large change of scope.
Hey, I had a question, I guess, for Ms. Patel. You mentioned that you were going to use this service from hospital to hospital. Is that what? Maybe you can. You can't probably talk over there, but can you expand on how that would actually work?
Benita, would you mind getting over to a mic? I just want to make sure people at home can hear you.
Yeah, and while she's coming forward, let me ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
So hospital to hospital is not part of this because this is just patient delivery. That is already allowed, correct?
So inventory is outside of the scope of our board. That's going to be the Department of State Health Services. So when you were talking about you'd like to move your stock around, that's not contemplated by this rule. That's a different agency.
Okay, when
that
I think
controls
prescription,
that.
so I thought anything with the label of an RX. So that's
Yeah, so
wonderful.
this would
If it's
be
patient specific,
patient
yeah.
specific.
Okay, so if it's patient specific, then so to answer your question,
I
the
was
first
just
phase
confused
is
about
prescription.
where this was headed. I didn't understand
Yeah.
that. So now
And
I
so
do.
the second, I thought that was, so when I read RX, I read it that way, but then I'd also like to send it like through Lifelight, right? That's patient specific to a trauma spot, which could be in a parking lot or on the interstate, right? So that's my third phased approach. One is going to be residential. Then I'd like to use it as a management of inventory and then also part of our Lifelight program.
The Lifelight may still be considered inventory, though, because
It's patient specific, so I didn't exactly know. So I wanted to make sure that we had it broad enough where we could do those services. Because we do pull out patient specific in emergency situations.
In regard to that, are you saying that if there was an accident on I-10, that you would send a drone with specific drugs?
I mean,
for
that is our long-term vision with drone delivery, to get access to medications quickly to those crash sites, like ReaPro, right? You've got a certain time frame that you've got to deliver that medication. Wouldn't it be amazing to the patient if we could get it there faster than them coming to the ED where we can meet them?
Thank you.
Are we also going to cover any other portion of, or just that portion, or how do you?
Let's
We
leave
done
it
with
that
that?
because we do have a motion, and I know, Rick, that
Okay.
with our Robert's Rules of Order, we probably went a little wide. So we do have a motion on just the residence part of it. So let's do one at a time. So, I'm sorry. So the motion was that.
As long as the modifications that Julie eloquently stated on the changes.
Rick, would you like to modify your motion to be to propose instead of adopt?
Yeah.
Okay, I used the wrong word. Propose, not to adopt. Thank you.
Or do you still need clarification? So it was mutually, yes. So my language was mutually agreed upon by the patient and the pharmacist using the pharmacist's professional judgment. So do we have a second for that? We have a second from Rick Fernandez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that language will go forward as proposed. So let's go ahead then and look at, and I think this is where you're going, is the cool, and looking at the temperature.
I guess for discussion, what is the risk of removing below a cool temperature line and leaving it up to the pharmacist to take responsibility for the appropriate temperature when they send this out?
And do we care
Colton?
for that under the section that talks about temperature?
I'm sorry, say that again, Suzanne.
Do we care for the appropriate temperature under the section that says temperature, that it's maintained, through the delivery process?
Well, I would just say, instead of saying calling out cool temperature, it's saying it should be just kept at the appropriate temperature for delivery.
So the language in the rule, if you're looking at 22, I know what line is this? I'm sorry. Yeah, so if you're looking at, depending upon, if you're looking at 89, so 87, where it says delivery by unmanned aircraft, we're listing exclusions. So based upon what you're saying, Rick, you're saying remove the exclusion? Because everything's done at the pharmacist's professional judgment.
Correct, and it's an assumption we're making here that's spelled out that it's going to be sent in an appropriate delivery mechanism. Calling out that it has to be in a cool temperature or not in a cool temperature is not really, I think, necessary. It's one additional rule there that we have to keep in mind. I just say as long as the pharmacy is correctly delivering that to them in the appropriate range. It's like with any delivery or anything else.
Trying to remember if we got that language from, I thought we got that from another board's rules. I thought that's where below the cool came from. I don't remember for sure.
I think it came as an extension of our discussion as far as proper temperature and, you know, that discussion. I'm not sure in drafting it whether we looked at another board's rules. I don't seem to remember that was the case, but
I don't know that it would have been the case, because I don't think there was another board at the time that we originally started doing this. I don't know that there was another board who had
yeah,
rules.
I think it was just an extension of when we were talking about, or our discussions as far as temperature delivery. Thoughts?
I think we'll remove the cool and leave it again up to the professional judgment, because who's to say that somebody needs something refrigerated immediately or, you know, within 5 minutes. If it's packaged appropriately, which one of the other rules says that it must be packaged appropriately, we should allow for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Saying I think the 3-minute, 10-minute, that's faster than my drive home, keeping it cool.
So Julia, my proposal would be to strike out the or drugs requiring storage below a cool temperature as defined by 2091.15 of this title.
Okay.
That would be to strike that portion out, would be my recommendation.
So is that a motion or
I mean,
recommendation?
anyone's still talking right now. I'll wait.
Sorry.
I'll wait if anybody else has any more comments.
Is there any other comments?
Kind of a question about the rules. So is there a way to, and I might be missing it, but it doesn't look like, you know, obviously we would expect that the product would stay at whatever the designated temperature is throughout, right? Is there anything in here about assuring that temperature is maintained? Like, is there anything that's actually enforceable? So for example, let's say that a pharmacy contracts with a drone company, no one present, of course, just saying, like, let's say there's a startup drone company and they're entrepreneuring under these new rules. Maybe the technology isn't as incredible as what we've seen, and now they send a product that's supposed to be frozen or even refrigerated for that matter, and it takes 30 minutes to get there or an hour to get there, and it's in the Texas hot sun, and it gets to the patient. Patient doesn't know that it isn't at the appropriate temperature. Like, how do we protect the public in that scenario is kind of my question. Like, the technology we've seen and we've talked about is fantastic, but these rules don't restrict it to just that technology.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but because there's not an exclusion in our drones, it will go back to line 65 on temperature, where it says the pharmacy shall ensure that any prescription drug delivered by a common carrier or contract carrier is packaged in a manner that maintains a temperature range appropriate for the drug. This may include, without limitation, use of temperature tags, time temperature strips, insulated packaging, gel, ice packs, or a combination of these as necessary.
Well, so we're under, that's under the top. We're under like 87 is where we're starting out here for delivery by unmanned aircraft systems. So if you drop down to line 113 is where temperature is referenced for our unmanned aircraft systems or drones. So I don't know that that's going to be.
But would not both rules apply?
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel like that's enough to? And again, the pharmacist is responsible. It's cold chain custody. They have to use their judgment, professional judgment, in sending it out. And if it's warm, they're going to have to replace it.
No, I'm good. I guess the only question I would have is, should that language be different or should it be mirrored? Is there any unintended loophole there or anything like that? I'm just thinking about how do we prevent the bad actor is all
Yeah.
I'm worried about here, or maybe the person that's not focusing to detail that they need to in that type of thing. That's all. I don't know if it. I mean, if council doesn't think we need to mirror the language and it can be interpreted the same, or if whenever I know we're proposing, so we would have another draft.
I think if you want those same things that are on line 65, that we would need to add those things to line 113, if that's your goal. Because if you drop down a little bit further on line 125, those are the rules that apply to all deliveries. So I think if you do want temperature tags and things of that nature, you'd be looking more at the 113 line.
So do you think that's what, on your side of the equation, that's what we should be doing, is adding that same information to the next, to line 113, add it to number 65? Is that what you're saying?
If
that's our
if that's what you want, if you
'Cause
want
that's what I was my
drones to
question. Why
use
can't we do that?
those tags and those methods that are listed on 65, then yes, I think you should add that in to temperature on the 113. I'm not telling y'all yes or no
I
on the
understand,
tags.
Rick, is that what you were thinking?
I mean, I think that would help get support for that, because I do think removing that line that I mentioned, removing the cool temperature reference would make more sense, more comfortable for everybody. So I proposed to do that change, or not yet?
Hold on. Aisha.
Oh, sorry.
On line 15, I just have a quick question. It says, until delivery has been received by the patient or patient's agent. I just wonder about the pharmacy's responsibility, and we're talking about replacing it if it's not received at temperature. What if that patient takes half an hour to go outside and get it? So should that maybe not be until it's been delivered appropriately versus received by the patient? Because if it's been delivered and they've done their part, they should be good.
But
And
the
if I fail to
pharmacy-
go out and get it, that
Yeah.
would be on me as far as replacing.
Yeah, the pharmacist is responsible. The way the rules are, the pharmacist is responsible until the patient receives it.
Until they receive it.
And so that's why it's so important that the patient and the pharmacist agree on where it's going to be picked up, what time it is, and that the packaging, if they're mailing it,
Right,
that the
that's
packaging
appropriate.
is suitable for the time that they expect it to be outside of their custody.
Okay, thank you.
Now I think you had a. Okay.
Help me a little bit here with this.
Okay.
We're going to make the edits for line 65 and 113, is that what we said?
Yes.
To be on 113, and in the process, remove the lines requiring the drug requiring storage below a cool temperature as defined by 291.15 of this title.
Okay, so we have a motion to propose that we're going to remove the exclusion of cool and that we're going to carry the temperature requirements down for drone delivery. So I think I heard a second from Randy. Okay, we have a motion to propose and a second. Now, this is taking it out of final adoption back down to propose. So with that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of those changes or that motion? All those opposed? Was that that you're opposed? Okay. It's a little bit different trying to do the swivel head, so y'all are gonna have to help me out on that. All right, so that motion then carries. We will bring that back next time, and go from there. All right, so that is going to take us then to John to C 1.3.
Yes, Madam President. And what we're looking at in C 1.3 is amendments to 291.32 concerning community pharmacy or Class A personnel. And what we're looking at here is the ratio of on-site pharmacists to pharmacy technicians or pharmacy technician trainees. And this rule, I will point out, this rule was included and considered in the Governor's March 2025 Small Business Freedom Council report. And so what we're going to look at is line 252, and it provides that except as provided in subparagraphs B and C, and then jumping to line 257 through 261, we have here the subparagraph B. It provides that subparagraph A of this paragraph does not apply to a central fill pharmacy as defined in 291.125 of this title relating to central prescription dispensing that has no patient-facing contact. For purpose of the subparagraph, patient-facing contact means any direct interaction between a pharmacy employee and a patient or patient's agent. The board did receive some comments from the National Association of Chain Drug Stores, Janu Phillip, RPH with Walgreens Company, and Rob Getty's PharmD with CVS Health, all expressing support for these amendments.
All right. And I believe that Janu is going to come forward and speak on this.
Yeah, I'll keep my comments very brief. My name is Janu Phillip, Director of Pharmacy Affairs for Walgreens. The board has amply, I think, discussed this, and we fully support the rule amendments as is. The need for technician ratio at central fill pharmacies, where there is a lot of automation and there is very little need for pharmacist oversight, since there are no patient-facing activities in these type of pharmacies. I think it makes sense to do what you're doing. So those are my comments, and I'm available for additional questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Janu before he leaves? All right, seeing none, thank you, sir. All right, what is the pleasure of the board? So we have.
I move we adopt as written.
All right, we have a motion from Donna to adopt.
Second.
We have a couple of seconds, but I'll go with the verbal one. We have a second from Rick Fernandez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one vote against, but the motion does carry. All right, with that, can we go to C.1.4, John?
Yes, Madam President. So C 1.4, 1, that's amendments amendments to 291.55 concerning nuclear pharmacy or Class B records. And here we're just doing a little cleanup. On line 98, it updates the statutory citation of the Texas Health and Safety Code, and it provides that Schedule II controlled substance, except as authorized in 481.075, that's what's being added, and it's striking through or fax prescriptions in 41.074, and that's because 41.074 has been repealed. So we're cleaning that up. And the next one, which we'll do together, is C 1.4.2, amendments to 315.13, and that's concerning the official prescription form. And here on lines 56 through 57, it strikes through faxed forms. Faxed official prescription forms will be accounted for as in the Texas Controlled Substances Act 41.0740. And again, that's because 41.0740 has been repealed. and there were no comments.
All right, board members. Do we have a motion to adopt? Do we have comments? Pleasure of the board. Okay,
I second.
I need to, who had the motion?
Suzette.
Suzette had the motion. So we have a motion by Suzette and a second by Donnie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, John.
And the next item is C 1.5, and these are amendments concerning common ownership. And the first one, again, we're going to do a couple together here, but the first one we're going to look at is 291.72, institutional pharmacy, Class Cs. And we're going to add some definitions for clarity. And the first definition is on line 72. It's going to define common ownership as two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board. And line 160, which provides the definition of owner of record, and that defines it as the direct owner of the pharmacy provided on the pharmacy's application for a pharmacy license or most recent approved change of ownership form. The board did receive comments from Texas Health Resources expressing concern that the amendments will require health systems to list the common corporate entity on a pharmacy's initial license and renewal applications rather than the location-specific hospital, resulting in discrepancies between the pharmacy's license applications and the pharmacy's Secretary of State registration, State Comptroller registration, and IRS filing. The next one we're going to look at with that, though, is C 1.5.2. That's amendments to 291.120. And again, we have those same definitions on line 48, defines common ownership as two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board. And line 50 defines that owner of record as the direct owner of the pharmacy provided on the pharmacy's application for a pharmacy license or most recent approved change of ownership form. Again, we received the same comment from Texas Health Resources expressing concern that the amendments will require health systems to list the common corporate entity on a pharmacy's initial license and renewal applications rather than the location-specific hospital, resulting in discrepancies between the pharmacy's license applications and the pharmacy's Secretary of State registration, State Comptroller registration, and IRS filing. The board also received comment from Rob Getty's Pharm D with CVS Health expressing concern that the amendments may have unintended consequences and suggesting that the definition of common ownership be modified to include an owner that is a legal parent, subsidiary, or affiliate. Next, we received a comment from Janu Phillip, RPH with Walgreens Company, expressing concern that the amendments may have unintended consequences and suggesting to define common ownership as two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board or which are controlled by the same legal entity. Those were all the comments.
All right, thank you, John. We did have Janu Phillip from Walgreens registered to speak on this. Janu, if you'll come forward.
Good morning. My name is Janu Phillip, Director of Pharmacy Affairs for Walgreens. I'm here representing all the Walgreens-owned pharmacies here in the state of Texas. So we do appreciate the opportunity to comment on the rule related to ownership definitions. We appreciate the board's efforts in terms of actually looking to clarify the rules in the first place. We do have some concerns around the proposed definition of common ownership. As it stands, common ownership includes all levels of the corporation, whether it's the owner of record with the board or ownership at a different level, such as a parent, subsidiary, or grandparent within the organization. However, the new definition seems to narrow the scope, and that could lead to either confusion or potentially burdens on some licensees. So we found a couple of areas in your current rules that where the narrower scope may be a concern, potentially even some chaos for the entities. One would be around 291.123, your central processing or medication order rules. There's a provision that if a pharmacy is a part of a network of pharmacies under common ownership, that patients need to be notified. So if the owner of record is not the exact same, then that pharmacy may be put in a position where they have to list all the pharmacies they're doing remote processing for. And so I don't believe that the board's intention was to create those additional burdens because a pharmacy might have a different owner that might be at a higher level. The second example is 297.6 under pharmacy technician and pharmacy technician training. So the rule indicates that training may not be transferred to another pharmacy unless the pharmacies are under common ownership and control and have a common training program. So as you can imagine, this might create a situation where a technician may need to go through a training program a second time and it might be unnecessary because they might have different owners from a board of pharmacy standpoint, even though they did the same training already. And so again, I don't think it was the board's intention to create these additional burdens and due to where the ownership level is. So to avoid any misunderstandings, we would suggest amending the rule to further clarify it. And if the board's intention was to allow the legal entity to be considered common owner, I don't think this would be considered a substantive change if that was the board's intention to begin with. And so the recommendation that we provided in our written comments is where I would stand, that common ownership should be amended slightly to say 2 or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board or which are controlled by the same legal entity. So in conclusion, we believe the amendment will help ensure clarity and prevent any unintended consequences. Thank you for considering our recommendation.
Thank you, Janu. Any questions for Janu? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, board members. Thoughts, questions, comments, motion?
I don't think that our intent was to make people have to do more because of the naming. So if this will help by putting or legal entity, then I think we should add it.
Megan, you want to weigh in, please?
So when we were originally drafting this, entity is a very difficult word. I don't know if you remember, we started talking about the business code and the different meanings and the applications there. So if you would be open to it, if that's what you want to do, I'd like to take it back to staff so we can find some wording that might be less complicated.
Yes, if you have a better word, that's fine, but just so that it gives that opportunity.
Does the suggested language by CVS help at all with the or each with an owner that is a legal parent, subsidiary, or affiliate of the others? Does that help, or are we in the same position where we'd like to?
Potentially, but I think we would want to spend some time with the business code before we gave an answer to that.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
What is the problem we're solving? Because that's helpful to know.
Yes. So there have been conversations, quite a few in licensing and several in compliance. A lot of them center around sterile compounding, where there's an argument that if there is any amount of shared ownership, that they should be able to be considered common owners and therefore take advantage of all of these situations, whether that be there is one managing officer that has a small share in this one as well as another one, and it gets pretty large and pretty remotely related, and it's caused concerns for some members of the licensing and compliance staff. And I think that's where, and I think it could go large vertical as well. So that was the original concern.
All right. Do we have any objections at moving this back to proposed and giving staff the instructions to do further investigating and discovery as to where our best language should land?
You need that in the form of a recommendation or motion or what? Just
No, if
Yeah.
you if you just want us to bring it
Is there
back-
anybody opposed? That's probably a better way to ask. Is there anybody opposed to taking this back to a proposed? All right, then. Do y'all have enough instructions from the board as to what we need to do?
I think essentially you want to effectuate the Walgreens and CVS comments, but in language that works for the Texas rules.
We want to make sure that we're not adding any burden to licensees, but we're clarifying.
Kind of the same thing with the institutional pharmacies as well, because some of them have they have the same kind of parent structure.
All right. That will take us down to C.1.6. I will remind the board, as well as those in attendance, that our goal with sterile product compounding was that we were going to go slow and we were going to get this right. And while we have a determination letter from the governor, a decision has been made that we are going to postpone this item on the agenda, and that a special meeting will be called with a date to be decided. So at this time, we are now at 10:01. We will go ahead and take a break for 15 minutes. Y'all give us 15 minutes? All right. We'll show and adjourn. This meeting back to order. Before we go to the proposed rules, we've had an unusual request come in. So board members, I'm going to ask you a question and we're going to need to make a decision. So if you look at the agenda and you look at, I just went blank, C.1.2, which was our drone delivery. A request has come in that rather than going with what we have decided, that to bring it back up for a vote and go with the original wording and let it be adopted as is, rather than taking it back to proposed. So the question now, not discussion, but the question now is whether or not you would like to bring it back up for another vote or leave our wording, leave our decision as it is now. So I will ask what the pleasure of the board is.
I mean, we can bring it back to the board and see if it flies as is.
That's my question, is do you
Let's
want...
do it. Sure. My opinion.
I think we wanted to add language, so that was the intent, was to be able to add language to it. I don't think that we want to adopt as is. So I would not be in favor of just adopting as is. We took out the delivery location and agreement by the pharmacist and all of that. I think that's a necessary thing. And on advice of our counsel, it has to go back for consideration. So, I mean, I would go with our counsel's advice.
I concur with you, Donna.
Okay, you want to...
I concur with Donna.
Yeah, the changes we wanted to make were substantive, so that's why we thought we had to take it back. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able.
Megan?
So I think the requester was asking if the board would adopt as is and then later on come back and make amendments. But as you're saying, if, that would mean that the rule would go as is without the changes that you had requested to be made for a period of time, I guess, until you adopted proposed changes later on.
Hey, Megan, if we've already proposed this, correct? We've already voted on it.
We took it back. Mm-hmm.
We can easily do that, but I agree. I probably leave it like it is and make our changes and then go out for comment, whatever we need to do at that point. Is that okay with us on the legal side if we choose to leave it like it is?
You can choose to leave it like it is. You can choose to recall the vote and vote again. It's up to you all.
Okay.
So the question now, currently, go ahead, Randy, and then I'll...
So, just being devil's advocate, I mean, this is fascinating. I didn't expect that to happen, but I guess the only, just being devil's advocate, the only thing that I would suggest is the things that we're proposing a change on are probably a very tiny percentage of the activity to be conducted, right? Like how many prescriptions are actually delivered that are frozen, right? So I don't know that it might not be a terrible idea to adopt and then go back and revise if we so chose.
We're also talking about the location.
I forgot about the location.
So that seems to me
that would
to
probably
be
be a bigger percentage.
a substantive thing.
So the question now is, how many individuals would like to take this back for a revote by a show of hands? Would like to bring it back up so that we re-propose it to adopt as is. How many would like to go ahead and leave our proposals the way that they are and let them move forward through the process? All right, then we'll leave it as it is. All right. With that, we're going to go to proposed rules. John, you want to take us to C.2.1?
Yes, Madam President. So we're going to do a few of these together, and we're going to talk about fees. I will tell you that these are placeholder fees because, as you know, we are in legislative session, and we won't know exactly what the fees should be until after the session is concluded and we have additional information. But looking at C 2.1, point 1, amendments concerning 291.6 concerning pharmacy license fees, you'll see here on line 6 where the initial license fee will go, and on line 10 where the renewal fee will go. And as I said, we're going to do these all together. The next one, C.2.1.2, amendments concerning 295.5 concerning pharmacist license or renewal fees. On line 8 there, you're going to see the initial license fee, where that's going to go. And on line 11, where the renewal fee is going to go. And then finally, on C2.1.3, amendments to 297.4 concerning pharmacy technician and pharmacy technician trainee registration fees. On line 5, you're going to see the pharmacy technician trainee fee. On line 10, the initial technician fee. On line 12, the renewal fee. And we're going to propose, and these are all proposals together.
All right. So do I have a motion to propose, knowing that we're going to come back and fill these in later? Have a motion from Donnie. I have a second from Bradley. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next one, Madam President, is C 2.2, and that's amendments to 291.17 concerning inventory requirements. I will point out that at the last board meeting, there was discussion of removing the notarization requirement, and this simply removes that requirement. I will also point out that this proposed rule amendment was included and considered in the Governor's March 2025 Small Business Freedom Council report. And just for some context and to point out that on lines 51 through 53, the rule as written provides that the persons taking the inventory and the pharmacist in charge shall indicate the time the inventory was taken, as specified in subsection A7 of this section, and shall sign and date the inventory with the date the inventory was taken. So that's already there. So the change that we're looking at now, and this would affect all pharmacies, is on lines 53 through 55, lines 66 through 68, and lines 78 through 80. And what the change would do is strike through the requirement that the pharmacist in charge signature be notarized within 3 days after the inventory is completed.
All right. So I will make note, at the last board meeting, we talked about having a co-signer if the PIC is not doing it. Staff is always doing great work, and that requirement's already there. So with that, I will entertain whether or not we have a motion to propose. I have a motion to propose from Randy. I have a second from Donnie. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bradley has opposed. Motion does carry. All right.
And the next item, Madam President, C.3, upper proposal is the review and approval of the fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2029 Rule Review Plan, and that's in accordance with Government Code Section 2001.039. I'll remind you that the board had finished out the previous Rule Review Plan, and so this Rule Review Plan will replace that. It updates all the dates. It makes sure that we go through all the rules as required.
All right, so our celebration last time of being done was very short-lived, as is required. This is our new Rule Review Plan. On this case, we actually need a motion to approve. Is there a motion to approve? Rick has made a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Donnie has made the second. All those in favor? All right. Motion to approve is in place, and we will start again next time. All right. With that, that takes us through our rules, and I will turn it over to Danny to look at D on our agenda.
Thank you, Julie. D.1 is a report on Prescription Monitoring Program Advisory Committee. And y'all, just because of scheduling was difficult, we couldn't get the group together. So no advisory committee meeting was held. The goal is to meet in early June. And the same with D.2. There was really no need to for an interagency PMP work group to meet.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Danny. With that, that'll take us to E. And Ruben, you want to run us through the financials?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. As a financial resource representative for the agency, I will be going over the first 3 agenda items within E.1 regarding the agency's financial updates. I want to start with the financial documents provided to you, starting with E.1.1, which is the agency's review of fiscal year 2025 second quarter expenditures. This budget status report reflects the agency's expenses activity as of the end of February 28th. The next item on the agenda is E.1.2. This report is the review of board member travel budget. This spreadsheet details and reflects the board's in-state and out-of-state cumulative travel expenses as of the end of the second quarter of fiscal year 2025. And lastly is agenda item E.1.3. For the second quarter of fiscal year 2025, there wasn't any consideration of material changes to contracts for goods and services for the board review. At this time, I'm available for any questions for the board, if you have any. And thank you, members, for listening to me.
Thank you, Ruben, as always. Any questions for Ruben on our budget? All right. With that, we will go to E.1.4. And Sean, you want to give us a legislative appropriations request update?
Good morning. The board's LAR is still moving through the legislature. At this time, our request is being heard by the conference committee. The conference committee drafts a budget that reconciles differences between the House and Senate versions and files it at the conference committee report, or as the conference committee report.
All right. Thank you, Sean. We are going to skip down to E.4. Danny, you want to take us through a calendar of events?
Just notice the calendar on E.4. The board meetings will continue to hold these quarterly. They're the first Tuesday of May, August, November, February. And also notice the holidays that may affect the staff and the office closures. That's pretty much for your information.
All right. All right, board members, E.5, there are a number of us that are attending NABP next week. And so as is our normal routine, we're looking at the resolutions to just see when they come up for vote, if there's any questions, concerns, or thoughts. So I'll just run through these, and if you'll just let me know your overall opinion. So the first was brought up by District 1, and it involves drugs lost in transit. And the resolution is that NABP will work with federal agencies, including the DEA, FDA, and the United States Postal Service, shipping vendors, wholesale drug distributors, and reverse distributors to further study this issue to identify causes and develop effective strategies to minimize the incidence of drugs lost in transit, thereby protecting public health, safety, and welfare. Thoughts, questions? All right, I'm going to take it that we're good with that one. On District 6, there is a resolution on care coordination. This one involves convening a work group to identify areas of the Model Practice Act to be amended to support the increased importance of care coordination among and between pharmacists, pharmacies, health systems, providers, health plans, and public agencies. to also look at ways to educate and collaborate with these practitioners. Thoughts? Any objections? All right, seeing none, I'll move on. The next is also by District 6, but it was co-supported by District 7 and 8, and this involves the community health workers. And the resolution is to encourage the adoption of community health workers as critical support personnel in pharmacies to help address social determinants of health, health disparities, and healthcare access inequalities among patients and community service. Any discussion or reservations on that?
I have a question, Julie. So is this saying that technicians, we just want to say technicians can be community health workers?
It adds all of the pharmacy personnel into the definition.
Does that affect anything with ratio or anything like that if a person is acting as, they're still a technician?
They're still a technician. Any other questions? All right. A joint accountability for pharmacy compliance, also brought by District 6, but co-supported by Districts 7 and 8. The resolution here is that NABP develop best practices for member state boards on holding permit holders and PICs jointly accountable for patient safety and compliance. Since this is something that we already do, I would assume that we have no issues with this. Also by District 6, but also co-supported by District 7 and 8, payer processor payments, rates, and methodologies impacting patient safety. The resolution here is that NABP be encumbered and free to cite, where appropriate, payer processor payments, rate, and methodologies as factors contributing to workforce challenges, burnout rates, worsening mental health, impacting patient safety, and increasing stress in the workplace. Any thoughts? Seeing none. The next, also by District 6, they were very busy, but co-supported by District 7 and 8, is national practice standards. And the resolution is that NAB collaborate with member boards and stakeholders to develop and support adoption of standardized, evidence-based pharmacy safety measures that are appropriate and achievable for the practice of pharmacy and provision of pharmacy services. Any thoughts? Objections? All right, District 7. This is NABP partner with other pharmacy organizations and engage with National Conference of State Legislators and the Council of State Governments and National Governor Associations and other policy organizations on current pharmacy issues. This was co-supported by Districts 7 and 8. The resolution here is to partner up, look at emerging issues, collaborate with these pharmacy organizations to advocate for the inclusion of pharmacy-related issues on the agendas of these organizations, to ensure that the perspectives of state boards of pharmacy and pharmacy professionals are represented in national and state level policy discussions, to establish formal work groups, joint initiatives, and task force with these organizations. And then overall, the collaboration will focus on fostering regulatory innovation within the pharmacy profession, promoting regulatory harmony across states, supporting high standards in pharmacy practice, and addressing the evolving challenges and opportunities in pharmacy to better serve patients and communities. No comments, no opposition. All right, District 8 did have an implementation of standard of care regulatory models. It was co-supported by District 7. This is that the NABP study the effectiveness of the implementation of the 2018 task force to develop regulations based on standard of care, the work group on workplace safety, well-being, and working conditions, and the 2023 Implementing Solutions Summit. And if necessary, based on the outcome of the research, to convene a work group to determine what barriers exist in implementing a standard of care regulatory model and to create the necessary tools for implementation. So this would basically take all of those task force recommendations, look at them, and possibly create a task force to see what barriers are. We are a board that legislatively has to come. Most of our changes come through the legislation, so we would be a state that they would look at as to where there's a barrier. Any thoughts? It is simply a study and a task force. All right. There is a MOUD co-supported. This is also District 8, co-supported by 6 and 7. This looks at medications for opioid use disorder. And the resolution is that NABP would partner with appropriate stakeholders and others to advocate for the DEA to provide clear guidance to wholesalers and manufacturers for MOUD products regarding pharmacy purchasing thresholds, and that these products to ease patient suffering and improving access to MOUDs. It would be that the NABP would establish a task force to identify additional opportunities and offer recommended actions that NABP and its board members could take to remove barriers limiting patient access to the MOUDs. Any objections, thoughts? All right, and so there was one last one. This one actually was submitted by the Executive Council, or the Executive Committee. And this is looking at a task force to examine the use of the test of English as a foreign language internet-based test as a requirement for foreign pharmacy graduate examination committee certification. And this would be just that they would form a task force to look at this as a requirement. Any thoughts? All right, so there are a number of us going next week. We will listen to the resolutions and take the appropriate action and vote. All right, with that, we will go to E.6. And Mr. Merriman, would you take us through the PMP?
Good morning, Madam President and members of the board. On March 3rd, we filled the vacant PMP program administrator position that we had. Because this position was filled by an internal promotion, we still currently have one vacancy on the team for a senior analyst position, which we hope to interview for and fill within the coming weeks. During the previous quarter, there were no significant feature updates or program enhancements. Next, I would like to highlight some of the PMP stats that were collected from the second quarter of fiscal year 2025. These can be viewed on the summary stat sheet, which can be found on tab E.6. There were a total of 3,104 new registered healthcare users that were granted PMP accounts during this period. By quarter's end, there were a total of 205,755 registered healthcare PMP users, which represents 75.1% of the total number of Texas licensed healthcare professionals that are eligible to have a PMP account. The percentage of eligible pharmacists that are registered with a PMP account actually decreased 0.5 of a percentage point to 97.4%. Percentage of eligible physicians that are registered with a PMP account increased 1.1% to 88.9%. There were a total of 78.8 million searches during this quarter. Of that number, 45.6% of all searches were conducted by pharmacists, while physicians conducted 40.9% of the total searches. Additionally, out of that total of 78.8 million searches, 64.9 million, or 82.5%, were integrated electronic health record searches rather than manual PMP searches. And finally, at the graphic at the bottom right of the stat sheet illustrates that the Texas PMP currently has data sharing agreements with 39 other states or entities. This number is unchanged from the previous stat sheet.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David? All right. Megan, you want to take us through E.7?
Of course. So first, we have Light Care RX LLC, the appeal. You've heard about this one for a while now. The pharmacy and the PIC filed a petition to appeal the board orders that were entered back in May of 2022, and an attorney from the Attorney General's office was appointed to handle this case for us. The appellants filed a notice of non-suit, and this matter has now been dismissed. And then secondly, we have the Amayosi matter. The petitioner, a pharmacist, has an agreed board order that was entered back in February of 2017, and we recently received an order of non-disclosure relating to the underlying conduct. The petitioner filed a motion for enforcement of the order of non-disclosure by contempt with the 179th District Court in Harris County, and an attorney from the Attorney General's office has been appointed to handle this case as well. A hearing was held on March 20th. However, the judge found the petitioner had not properly filed his petition and exhibit, so the hearing did not move forward at that time. And subsequently, the petitioner has renewed the motion for enforcement, and the OAG has filed a response to the new motion. And that's everything.
All right. Thank you, Megan. And with that, we'll go to E.8. Sean, you want to take us through an update on the legislative session?
Thank you, Madam President. Attached is a chart of bills from the legislative session that primarily pertain to the practice of pharmacy. I will be summarizing a few of the bills that are of interest. Please note that I will be jumping around the table as I present, and I'll try to go slowly so everybody can stay along. Starting with HB 632, this bill allows for an emergency refill of insulin up to a 30-day supply or greater if the smallest commercially available package exceeds a 30-day supply. Moving to HB 845, this bill pertains to the authority of pharmacists to furnish certain medications, specifically allowing them to provide prescription drugs for identified acute conditions following the performance of waived clinical laboratory tests. Moving to HB 1027, this bill introduces several modifications to the telepharmacy framework within Texas law, including licensing of remote dispensing sites, alterations to staffing requirements, and eliminating mileage restrictions. Next, HB 1700 mandates that each regulatory agency overseeing health professions providing telemedicine, teledentistry, or telehealth services adopt rules to standardize formats and retentions of records concerning a patient's consent for treatment, data collection, and data sharing. HB 1771 states that refusing to dispense a prescription on the grounds that it is for an off-label purpose is not a valid justification for refusal. HB 1838 proposes the verification of health care practitioner continuing education compliance by establishing structured requirements and systems within the Texas Occupations Code. Moving down 3 rows, HB 3219 introduces a statewide order that permits licensed pharmacists in Texas to dispense ivermectin without a prescription from a healthcare practitioner. Additionally, the bill provides legal protections for pharmacists against civil or criminal liability unless there is evidence of willful misconduct or gross negligence. Again, moving down 3 rows, HB 3540 modifies the definition of the practice of pharmacy to include the ordering and administration of immunizations or vaccines by pharmacists to patients of certain ages. Additionally, the bill allows the authority of a pharmacist to administer an immunization or vaccine to be delegated to a certified pharmacy technician. Next, Senate bills, which begin on the second page. Senate Bill 254 is the Senate companion to HB 3540, which you just heard. Skipping down to the bottom of the chart on the third page, SB 1985 specifies that pharmacists can only refuse to dispense if the drug is identified as an abortion-inducing drug or an emergency contraceptive, or if it is a controlled substance from Schedule 2 to 5 suspected of potential misuse. Lastly, SB 2470 introduces several updates regarding the labeling and dispensing of prescription drugs or biological products. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions for Sean? All right. Seeing none, we will continue to monitor these, and then we'll wait for the instructions that come. With that, we'll go to F. Caroline, you want to take us through the enforcement reports?
Yes, thank you. All right, F.1, this is your report on the complaints that have been closed. We're looking at the second quarter. So this is as of the end of February of this fiscal year. The top chart adds a breakout of complaints that were closed regarding with disciplinary action and then with the institution of disciplinary action. The bottom is a summary of those that were closed with formal disciplinary action, either the agreed board order or board order, and then all the other closed complaints. And on page 2 of F.1, this is the quarterly average for the second quarter of this fiscal year compared to the last fiscal year. And then F.2, this is the open complaints for the board. The top chart you're familiar with, this is the last 5 fiscal years. The second chart is the final column on the right-hand side, the open complaints as of April 15th, 2025 by their aging category.
All right. Any questions for Caroline? I'm sorry, none? Okay. It's good to see the days went down and see that time change like that. So great job to you and your team, and thanks for all that y'all do. All right. With that, we are going to skip down to G.2.
Okay. So you have received the information associated with the links and the items under G in a link. That information has also been put on your laptops. So these are all of the agreed board orders, default orders, and remedial plans that have either been entered or are being proposed to you. So G.2 is a report on all of the orders that have been entered by Danny as our executive director. These are the ones that you have authorized him to enter. This item does not need a vote. It's just for your information. So if you don't have any questions on those, we'll move on to the next part. So next we have G.3 and G.4. G.3 are the proposed agreed board orders and default orders. G.4 are the proposed remedial plans. These include both orders and remedial plans resulting from informal conferences and those proposed by mail per your previous instructions. You'll notice for the orders resulting from an informal conference, the chart indicates the board members that were at that informal conference. If you participated in the IC, we would automatically recuse you from that vote. So unless you have any questions about these, we would need a motion to approve the proposed agreed board orders and default orders and the proposed remedial plans. So that's both items G.3 and G.4.
All right. Any comments, or do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion we approve.
Go ahead.
G2 and G3.
G3 and G4?
I'm sorry, G4. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right. I think that Rick had already had his second in there, so we have a motion by Donnie, a second by Rick. All those in favor? All right. All right. So that takes us down to H.1, and I will go ahead and ask if there are any items to be placed on the agenda for our August 5th meeting. Seeing none. I will make note, I want to recognize Donnie Lewis, who this week will be recognized by the University of Houston College of Pharmacy as a Golden Cougar for 50 years since graduation. So, I will also remind the board members as we prepare for NABP next week that there is a May 16th deadline for anyone wishing to be on a task force. So if you would like to do that and have not, please get your application in. It is a very worthwhile service to NABP. So if you keep that deadline in mind. NABP is next week, May 13th through the 16th. We do have tech informal conferences on May the 15th. We also have informal conferences June 3rd through the 5th, and then July 8th through the 10th. TPA will have their conference on July 18th through the 20th. It will be here in Austin. And then our next board meeting is on August the 5th. It is 11:05 at this point. This is a little unusual, but all of our other agenda items have been put on a schedule. So we will actually adjourn until 1 o'clock for lunch. So we welcome y'all back at 1, but at that point, we'll take back up the agenda. And with that, we'll adjourn.